Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast. Glad to have you here and listening on WABE. Our strategists are here today, Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson. It's the end of the week, but not the end of this political cycle here in Georgia. We have a lot going on with the Senate race and the governor's race, don't we?
It's going to be a year of crazy. It's going to be awesome. If you love Georgia politics.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome. If you love Georgia politics, this is the Super Bowl, man. And this is it's going to be one heck of 18 months.
I think this is going to be the first time in a long time, Lisa, seriously, where you guys are going to be very busy on Morning Edition because you're going to be able to go to sleep, because I know you guys go to sleep early and let's say 10 o'clock. And by the time you wake up at 3 major events could have happened. Seriously, I think it's just going to be that
kind of year.
No, because the Republicans are going to have candidates who are going to try to destroy each other, and Democrats, while we're playing nice, and I think we will most of the time, there are going to have to be some comparison and contrast things made here. But I would say this: the other thing that is real deal. I went to the Braves and Yankees game and was able to spend some time with some folks from the Atlanta Beltline Partnership. And when you go to the Braves game and people recognize you and recognize your voice and immediately start talking to you about the governor's race, and two of the couples that I talked to, Lisa, were people who listen to Political Breakfast who are huge New York Yankees fans. So that was the first turnoff for me, right? They had these Yankees jerseys on. But they wanted to corner me in the concessions line and start talking about who's going to be the next governor of Georgia. And so while it was 90-something degrees, that 1:30 game on Sunday, we ended up having a good conversation. But
I was going to say, did you take the time? Tharon took the time to talk.
I always try to speak to people. I don't ever want folks to say I'm not nice and good. But I was only on my second tequila Blanco. Had they caught me on my third one, Lisa, I get a little loose. That would have been a different conversation.
And the Braves didn't win that one, did they?
No. First time Aaron Judge hit a home run in Truist Park. And I knew right there in the first inning, I was like, oh, my God. But the Braves, they got to get it together. They got to make a run. We're not looking too good, but we got some very favorable games coming up in this schedule.
Yeah. As we're taping, I'm wearing my late 1970s baby blue Atlanta away jersey T-shirt.
There it is. It is.
So I'm a lifelong fan, but there is no way in hell I am sitting in 90-degree heat to watch anything. I'm just not.
Well, I failed to mention I was you noticed that, B-Rob, you didn't catch it. I was in a suite. I don't know if I said that.
That's the only way.
Yeah. So I'm a little bougie when it comes to my outdoor sports activities.
Sweet. Yeah. Oh, wow.
I'm not going to be in direct sunlight at my house, outside, at a Braves game, anything. The one exception I make, there's that first and second September UGA game where I often go kind of expecting to get heat stroke. I suffer that, but other than that is where I draw the line.
Because fall's coming. Fall's coming.
It's on the way, baby.
What was your take a few days ago? Word seeped out that Representative Mike Collins was lining up endorsements for a likely run for the U.S. Senate. Did either of you see that coming?
Yes, it's been telegraphed for some time, and speaking with people in his orbit, I think that we can assume that their fingerprints have been on some of these attacks on Derek Dooley's potentially emerging campaign. There is this thematic about the Dooley's Volunteers that makes fun of his time as the Tennessee Volunteers head football coach. The fact that the Collins folks are probably involved in that suggested to me that they were trying to open up a lane for themselves. I'm not saying that it's them. I'm saying that is the assumption within the Republican circles. And I think the Collins people see a playing field where there's a lane for somebody who is seen as very loyal to Trump, but perhaps has a little bit of establishment sway, a little bit of cachet with those voters as well. Somebody who can be acceptable to both wings of the party. Certainly making the assumption, rightly or wrongly, that they think Buddy Carter doesn't do that. Buddy Carter has tried to be in that lane, to be somebody who can kind of cover both ends, the Kemp wing, the Trump wing, the MAGA wing of the party. Collins is saying, hey, I don't think that Buddy can do it. So the challenge for Mike Collins, who isn't able to write a check perhaps as big as what Buddy Carter can do. Buddy Carter is extraordinarily wealthy. He's already put in $2 million of his own money, more to come, I would imagine. Is Mike Collins going to do what it takes to spend all day on the phone raising money? Because that's what it's going to take. Federal limits are much lower than state limits. It is really hard to raise the money. Are they getting in thinking that they're going to get the Trump endorsement? Now, that's something that's kind of hanging out there. No one seems to have been the consensus candidate between Trump and Kemp, which is what we were all hoping for in the absence of Kemp running. Kemp was obviously the best candidate for this race. So has there been a deal struck? Now, has he been talking to Trump? Is Trump going to come in for him? Where does that put Kemp? Does he come out fully for his buddy Derek Dooley? I know the Kemp people are actively pushing Derek Dooley with the White House and other Republican entities in D.C. that, very openly so. Kemp's guy, Cody Hall, was with Derek Dooley for all those meetings in D.C. So that's going to be one of the things that is really interesting to watch play out here. And does that still leave Buddy Carter with a good lane? We'll see. That's going to be up to Buddy Carter. He's got to prove himself to be a great candidate. I know he'll work really hard. And I think Mike Collins will work really hard. Will Mike Collins work really hard on the stuff that's not as fun? He's really good at going out and being with the people. I think he's got a lot of talent there. People respond well to him. Will he sit in a room and make the phone calls? I think that's going to be, and will Trump be with him? Those are the big questions for me right now.
Tharon, before you respond, whose dog is that wants to get in on the conversation there?
That may be mine. We have a corgi.
Is that
corgis
your
talk
dog?
a lot. Can you hear that? Golly, that dog's going to drive
Lisa,
me nuts.
I was about to ask the same thing now. B-Rob, we've been doing this show for 10 years.
Yeah.
I've never heard you mention a second dog. Now, you want to talk about prosperity and you talking about, growth and wealth. I don't even know what is it called?
A corgi.
A corgi. What is a corgi?
There's no dog like Queen Elizabeth had corgis.
Oh, Queen Elizabeth. Did you hear that, Lisa? That was a slight flex. Right? Like, basically, we over here with the same dog that Queen Elizabeth had. I want our viewers to, for a second, just come into here. I'm sitting here in my office, which I still have no artwork on the back. No dogs barking. Sunlight barely coming in. A little dark.
You've been in that office long enough to have some artwork, though.
But B-Rob, on the other hand, is in his vintage Atlanta Braves shirts with all this University of Georgia paraphernalia, signed, not signed. Yeah. I'm sure Herschel Walker signed some stuff. Maybe you can auction it off and help raise some money for the car campaign. In a corgi dog in the background. Well, you guys, while we're all out here hurting with our 401ks and stock market is unpredictable.
I'm sorry, Brian. I opened you up to all this. Yeah.
Brian is over here with a new dog. Anyway. Mike Collins. Yeah. Brian just did an exceptional job, I think, of handicapping this. And the only question I would ask B-Rob, he may or may not answer this, is that, with Derek Dooley, Cody Hall, as you mentioned, you got to think Kemp and First Lady Marty Kemp are probably going to say, hey, go out and run your campaign. You got to prove yourself, right? But we're gonna give our folks the nod to talk to you. You got Buddy Carter over here, who you and I both saw at GHA, again, Georgia Hospital Association. Shout out to them. Which I failed to mention that, not only did Buddy Carter attend, I mean, he kind of worked the room, right? And I think from what I heard from a lot of Republican insiders, that was something that he has not historically done. How about that? That's a fair way of saying it. But I asked the question is, what is Brad Raffensperger going to do? If I'm Brad Raffensperger, and Brian may or may not think about this, is that if it comes down to being able to give yourself money, we know that he's independently wealthy as well. Buddy Carter has gotten a early start. He's identified himself as a MAGA warrior. Mike Collins comes in, though, Lisa, and this is a game changer because we also know that he is a loyal, staunch supporter of the president, even when the president was probably under his most vicious attacks. Mike Collins was definitely there defending him. So the other thing I want to point out, it is not a surprise to answer your question directly, Lisa, because, correct me if I'm wrong, B-Rob, I mean, Mike Collins had a video, a message that kind of got put out there where he was talking to his constituents and saying that he had not planned to do this and that he loves his district, he loves the people in which he serves. But then he says, things change. Sometimes you have to answer the call. And he said, I'm going to talk about it with my family and pray about it with my friends. And so it was not a surprise. but we'll see if he gets in. And then I think the next shoe to fall, the next person that people will now focus on, well, really two people, would be Marjorie Tayl Greene and Brad Raffensperger.
Obviously, MTG has talked about the governor's race openly. Everybody's kind of talking about Raffensperger's calls to donors and supporters being about running for governor. So, earlier in the week, I was talking about the governor's race not being settled yet. And I think that's I think those two will end up in that race. It's just
I was going to
interesting.
say, what will it take for Marjorie Tayl Greene to run? Because we keep hearing, she continues to hint at a run for governor. She continues to hint. I don't know, as a strategist, what are the people saying to her? What are they talking about? What are they huddling about at this point?
Well, I would imagine the White House, which has taken a great interest in Georgia races in 2026, is saying, hey, we need you in the House. We need you here in Washington fighting for us. You could possibly win a primary, but the pathway to a general election win is very, very low. But she keeps hinting about the governor's race. Obviously, that would be an explosive move here in the state, would have great repercussions in the primary. I don't know that she can win a primary, but she could definitely get a lot of votes. I think she's got a pretty high floor. Don't know quite yet where the ceiling is. I don't know that it's 50 plus 1. I think Marjorie Tayl Greene is much more savvy than a lot of people, her haters particularly, give her credit for. She can read a poll. She knows she's got a lot of juice in a primary, but that she would have a really hard hill to climb in a general election where she's got to go and get the deciders, the people who rejected Herschel Walker, even as they were voting for Brian Kemp. So I think she would have a hard time with the deciders in a general election, and I think she knows that. But nevertheless, she would certainly make it wildly entertaining. She would put a national spotlight on the primary in a way that would be impossible without a character like her. So, I think we all wait with bated breath to see what she's going to do, because it would certainly be very interesting.
Well, Tharon, what do you think about that MTG factor?
Well, just something to really point out here, and I was just sitting here thinking about this. Right now, in the U.S. Senate race on the Republican side, you have all white men except John King, Hispanic, right? Mm-hmm. On the gubernatorial side, you have all white men who've announced and who we're talking about, but the only white woman is Marjorie Tayl Greene. One of the things we always talk about in Democratic primary, and for our listeners the last couple of weeks, B-Rob has been talking about, it's hard to basically say to beat a black woman in a Democratic primary. And we just saw that a black woman can be defeated in a Democratic primary runoff for PSC. Marjorie Tayl Greene gets into this race. Not only would it be extremely entertaining, I mean, it would be, oh my God, the debates, but even the attacks would just be unbelievable. But the question then becomes, where do white women fall on this, and white men? A lot of white men have shown that they vote Republican. They haven't been able to have a white woman statewide other than Karen Handel be on there. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, B-Roll, who's been on a statewide ballot as a woman? I mean, we had Kelly Loeffler, who was nominated, right? But where I'm going with this is that Karen Handel, of course, did not win statewide for governor, but did serve as a congresswoman. Kelly Loeffler, Lisa, was appointed first, and but did not get elected to go back to Washington. So I think, to B-Rob's point about reading a poll, Marjorie Tayl Greene has got to figure out, how do I put together a winning Republican coalition in a general? In a primary, I think she also will have some challenges too, because while she is very outspoken and has said some very controversial things, and she is savvy, how do the Republican men handle her in a debate, handle her in the campaign? Because you go at her too hard, I mean, she gets a lot of sympathy votes. She gets people kind of rallying behind her. But I just don't know many people who really sympathize with her. And I don't know if she wants it. I mean, my point is that she's dug in who she is and what she believes in. And if you watch her in these hearings, I mean, you talk about clapback. I mean, let's not forget, this is the same woman who booed Biden and interrupted him throughout his entire State of the Union speech. So I have historically said on this podcast, Lisa, and I said it twice about Trump, bring him on. He's so polarizing. He's so negative. People are not going to rally behind him. I'm not going to say that this time. because
Just
Marjorie
don't know.
Taylor Greene
Right.
could be a challenge for Democrats if she's successful in the primary. And we all think that Chris Carr is going to be a challenge too, because he has the appeal right now to go and expand that coalition because he's kind of moderate. But I think that Chris Carr is going to be a little bit more to the right. He's got to be if he's going to win the primary. And in Burt Jones, you know who he is. And then we just finished talking about Mike Collins. But I want to go back to something you said, B-Rob. So you think that Raffensperger and MTG could possibly run for governor? I don't want to make sure I'm. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that if that happens, Lisa, I mean, we haven't even talked about this. I mean, this is going to open up congressional seats across the state. And then turnout in those open congressional seats become extremely important to everyone's path. Because if you have three members of Congress, Buddy Carter, Mike Collins, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who all vacate their seats to run, one would think that Republicans got to be worried about, will they get the turnout that they need, and who would be the candidates in those seats, because you don't want to have a drop off in those congressional districts as well. And then on the Democratic side, I mean, we don't have anybody as of right now running for governor who's losing a seat other than Jason Estevez. I mean, he would lose his, he'll give up his state Senate seat. Then you got to watch districts like 13 and others like that. David Scott's going to be highly contested, but that's only going to be highly contested in the primary. I don't see a Republican winning that. So that's just to kind of take our listeners into how the decisions with these people to vacate seats, particularly on the Republican side, and run for governor of the U.S. Senate, turnout in those districts have got to be a concern for the GOP.
Yeah. And I will say, circling back, I think the MTG conversation is interesting. I think she would certainly throw a wrench into the gears, but I also, at the end of the day, think she won't do it because she has a lot to lose. I mean, she has not just a congressional seat, she has a national platform, and for the next 3 years has open door access to the White House. Now, we'll see how long that lasts, because she has shown that she will post up on Trump if she disagrees with him. She's not with him on Ukraine. And by the way, thank you, President Trump, for sending arms to Ukraine. I'm so thrilled to see America doing that again. But she's posted up on him on this cryptocurrency legislation that happened last week. She's been, jangling the chains about this Jeffrey Epstein case.
And she didn't like the fact that the president bombed Iran.
Yes. I mean, she is like a dyed-in-the-wool isolationist. She really does believe in that, and she stands on a principle. And, I give her credit. It's so hard to stand on principle in this era if you disagree with Trump, because it can end your career. She has shown she just doesn't care.
She doesn't
right?
care.
And that she's sort of like untouchable. She's Teflon. It's remarkable what she's able to do. I don't agree with her on a lot of things. And I think some of the stuff that she has said through the years is, eye rolling. And she's raised questions about whether 9/11 happened, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you got to admire that she has a backbone and she has courage and she's willing to fight for her convictions. You may think her convictions are nuts, right? But she stands by them and she's willing to fall on the sword for them.
Well, before we wrap this up, this is one that I'm watching closely. Michael Thurman was in Albany. Some say that he made an informal announcement that he is running for governor. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? He's holding these listening tours. So it's like, okay, when is that official announcement coming? Some say he jumped ahead of himself, got a little excited and said he was running. But I don't know. What was your take on that?
So, yeah, over the weekend, Michael Thurman has been doing what he's been doing now for a long time, Lisa, and that is what I wrote this article in the Georgia Trend, Red, Blue, and You, and I said Democrats need to follow the 5 L's, and one of the most important L's was to listen to the voters, listen to them, and not only what we did wrong, but also what can we do right going forward. And so that is what Michael Thurman has been doing, is going around the state for a long time now, talking to voters, but also listening. What he was doing, he was actually speaking at the Baptist Convention in Albany, Georgia, Albany. Let me say it the right way. And, in a sort of prophetically way, said, hey, next year when I come back, if I'm invited back, I'll be running for governor. So again, a prophetically term that says, they only gave him a few minutes to speak. He actually gave them some time back and said that hopefully he'll be able to come back next year as a candidate for governor. So just like Mike Collins, just like Marjorie Tayl Greene, just like Burt Jones and others, you see candidates' ability to utilize, in some cases, the power of incumbency, but he's not an incumbent. He's no longer serving as CEO of DeKalb County, but utilizing their networks to get around and talk to folks. And so it was not an official announcement, but as I've been saying on this podcast now for weeks, he is running. He will be officially announcing soon. But one of the things that he's doing, unlike other candidates, Lisa, spending a lot of time outside of Metro Atlanta, going to South, Middle Georgia, Southwest, Southeast, North Georgia, listening to these folks. And I think what he's going to be able to do is take all of this time that he's been spending with these people in a not official capacity as a gubernatorial candidate, but as a known person, having served as labor commissioner, having served in state rep, and having served in DeKalb and others, and DFACS directors, and also was at University of Georgia and an author, his book tours. I think he's going to take all of that and bundle it up and say, you know what, guys, I'm ready to go out here and run a change election for governor. And I think that announcement will be coming sooner than later.
Yeah. Look, Mike's been great to me personally. When he was CEO of my county and I had an issue on my street, I would text the CEO of the county and I would not only get a response, I would get action from him. So I am personally very fond of Mike Thurmond. And I think that he was a competent leader of a county where competence was in short supply for many, many years before him. I think he would be a formidable candidate. My question is this guy's been in public service for decades, since I was in high school, at least, maybe before that. And I'm not that young. So, and we know that after a certain age, you slow down a little bit. Can you keep up the rigors of the race? I'm not insulting you, Mike. I'm just raising a question from the outside here. I think you got to go out there and prove that you can keep a strong pace with Jason Estevez and Keisha Lance Bottoms, who are, of course, much younger. But here's what I would do if I was Mike Thurmond running in a Democratic primary. He's got a lot of name ID and support in DeKalb County, which is a massive cachet of Democratic votes in a primary. I would focus like a laser on DeKalb County Democrats, and to some degree, Fulton County, where people know him. And then, of course, Clark County, where he and Tharon are both from. Obviously, Mike Thurmond's campaign is how Tharon first got his entree into politics. We've heard him tell that story here before. Mike can focus on those areas, maybe go do airdrop occasionally into Richmond County, Augusta, Bibb County, Macon, Muskogee County, Columbus. And he's just got to turn out DeKalb. And if he can do that, he'll be in a runoff, right? The only other person who matches him for name ID is Keisha Lance Bottoms. And some of her name ID isn't positive, even amongst Democrats. There's been some reticence about her. I think overall, Mike's positives amongst Democrats are probably higher. So that'd be my advice. Focus on DeKalb and try to turn it out, and let the rest of the candidates focus on the rest of the state. I would never, if I was Michael Thurmond's campaign, unless I was picking up checks, I would never go north of Alpharetta in the state, right? It needs to be like this little break, he needs to be between DeKalb and Macon at all times, right? And that's the only place I'd ever go.
Brian Robinson, you heard it right here, is a Republican strategist, communications consultant, and former deputy chief of staff for Governor Nathan Deal. Tharon Johnson, a Democratic strategist, public affairs and government consultant, and most recently a senior advisor to the 2020 Biden Georgia campaign. Thanks to both of you for your insight. Have a great week. I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about next week, so see you then.